Good morning, good afternoon, actually, and thank you all for joining us in our 2024 complimentary webinar series covering the FAR, or Federal Acquisition Regulations. We're coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being here. Okay, so just a little bit about the series. As usual, all of our webinars are complimentary and recorded. And the FAR has 52 total parts, so we're going to run through them sequentially each week on Wednesdays and Fridays at noon Eastern Time. The recordings and the PowerPoints are going to be posted within 24 hours of the webinar ending, and you can find all the recordings on our YouTube channel simply by subscribing to it using the link you see on the screen. There's no cost for this. You can find the PowerPoint on the SlideShare site using your LinkedIn credentials to log in. And again, there's no cost for this either. We also offer sponsorship opportunities, so if you're interested in that, please shoot us an email to hello@jennifershouse.com. And now how to sign up for the series. So unfortunately, there isn't any bulk registration, so you do have to register for each webinar individually. But if you go to the Jennifer Schaus website, navigate to the section called the FAR, you'll find the individual registration links, and also the recording links will be posted here upon completion of each of the webinars. Please note that we also covered the FAR in 2020, so if you're eager to get a jump start, you can find these historical recordings on our website. You just navigate to the webinars tab and scroll down to the section, the FAR 2020. Just because it has been 4 years, many of the regulations have changed and been updated, so please use this as a reference tool only. And now a little bit about us. We work with established federal contractors worldwide, helping them to navigate the market. Our services range from the market analysis reports to contract vehicles and compliance. Some of the contract vehicles we support are listed here on your screen. For more information, please visit our website. Okay, so those are our services for federal contractors. We also provide marketing and advertisement services for organizations who are selling to federal contractors. We can add extra muscle to your marketing efforts via our newsletter ads and webinar sponsorships to in-person events. Please email us and ask for our media kit. We're currently offering a spring special with discounted rates, more specifically a buy one, get one special for our newsletter. Ads will run for 13 weeks starting May 6th. Please email us if you have questions or want a quote. Contract vehicles can be a great marketing tool for pursuing federal businesses. Current open solicitations include Navy Seaport Next Generation and NASA SOUP. Additionally, the GSA schedule is an open and rolling RFP. If you qualify for any of these and need proposal support, please email us to get a quote at hello@jennifershouse.com. As you know, congressional hearings on both the House of Representatives and on the Senate side are open to the public unless otherwise stated. We have a list here of next week's schedule, including the date, time, buildings, and room numbers. Most meetings will take place in the Dirksen, Rayburn, or Cannon building. Next week's meetings are primarily around budget requests. If you're selling to any of these departments or agencies, attending these hearings can be a great way to gather information, understand the process, and also network with influencers. Coming up in June, we will hear from Carrie Palmatier on small business innovation in federal contracting. Specifically, Carrie will cover information on SBIRs and STTRs. These two options are a great way for tech companies to grow in the federal sector. This is a two-part series, and as always, these are recorded and complimentary. Our webinars are complimentary thanks to our long-time and generous corporate and in-kind sponsors. Please allow me to introduce them. We would like to thank our friends at GovEvents, the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. You can find all of our events and all of our webinars and our events on govevents.com, as well as recordings from our past 600 plus webinars. We also want to thank Tom Johnson and his team at Set Aside Alerts, the go-to publication for contracting opportunities for small, women-owned, veteran-owned, HubZone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. The Fairfax Economic Development Authority has an online calendar of events and webinars. We want to thank them for posting our events and webinars on their calendar. The Virginia Apex Accelerator at George Mason University offers free one-on-one counseling to established government contracting firms in Virginia on federal, state, and local procurement topics. If you're interested in learning more, please use the links provided to explore their services, review homework recommendations, register for live trainings, and find useful links to agencies and other self-directed learning. One-on-one counseling is limited to eligible client companies, and appointment requests are handled in the order they were received and based on counselor availability due to high demand. Online resources and group trainings are free with no restriction on business location. Join the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce's monthly GovCon Council meeting to network with peers, learn about upcoming events and opportunities, and help to shape future programming. The meetings take place on the fourth Tuesday of each month at 8:30 in the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. The next meeting will be on April 23rd from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. The Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce will be hosting its 12th annual NOVA B2G Matchmaking Conference and Small Business Expo on May 2nd in Reston, Virginia. The event includes networking, matchmaking, breakout sessions, an expo hall, and keynotes from the government and industry. Attendees can schedule one-on-one matchmaking meetings with primes and agencies and also visit the expo showcasing services to help GovCon succeed. Education sessions will cover the full life cycle of government contracting from proposal creation to compliance. Please visit novab2g.restonchamber.org for more information. Do you want help winning government contracts? BidSpeed can help. Users can find contract opportunities from federal, state, and local government. Additionally, you can search for teaming partners, incumbent point of contact, expiring contracts, compliance matrices, and also proposal templates. Create your login at bidspeed.com. BidSpeed is an official partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration's E2G Empower to Grow program. Events are the ultimate engagement channel to bring government and industry together. 68% of government personnel report that they attend more than one event each year. The Federal Business Council, or FBC, has worked with government and industry for 45+ years to create gatherings where ideas are shared and to help government achieve its goals. This includes agency industry days, cybersecurity symposiums, technology expos, and offsite meetings. FBC provides full lifecycle meeting planning and event management. With over 5,000 meetings under their belt, FBC has the experience, systems, and personnel to make your next event exceptional. Learn more at www.fbcinc.com. Please check out our friends over at GovBrew. GovBrew is the most read GovCon newsletter, keeping thousands of GovCon professionals in the loop with news, updates, and opportunities in the federal contracting market, all in a fun and accessible email that only takes 5 minutes to read. It's 100% free to join. It goes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m., and it's filled with great content, event postings, webinars, and more. We encourage you to sign up at govbrew.co, or you can use the QR code you see on the screen. Okay, now let's meet today's speaker. Please welcome Matthew Sigmund to the webinar. Matthew, thank you for being here today. We're honored to have you with us, and we're really excited to hear a presentation on the FAR. We appreciate the time you took to put together the content. Matthew, now I'll put myself on mute and turn the floor over to you. Please let me know when you're ready for the next slide, and I'll advance them as we had previously discussed.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today to discuss FAR Part 24. Let's go ahead and get started. You can jump to the next slide. Privacy and data security are becoming increasingly hot topics in the federal space. Today, we will discuss how the federal government protects sensitive information, in particular as it relates to data and information that contractors may have access to through contracts that require them to put in place systems of records on individuals. FAR Part 24 prescribes the policies and procedures that apply requirements of the Privacy Act of 1974 and OMB Circular A130 to government contracts. When Congress enacts laws and regulations that are intended to apply to government contractors, those are incorporated into contracts via the FAR and its agency supplements, such as the DFARS and the HHS-AR. Next slide, please. This slide shows an overview of how FAR Part 24 is framed. The first part focuses on implementation of Privacy Act requirements, which protect individuals' privacy, while the second part focuses on Freedom of Information Act, which ensures the public has access to certain types of government data and information and provides mechanisms for individuals to access that information. Next slide. Let's start by talking about the Privacy Act itself. It was created in the 1970s to balance the government's need to maintain information about individuals with the rights of individuals to be protected against unwarranted invasions of their privacy, stemming primarily from federal agencies' collection, maintenance, use, and disclosure of personal information about them. Congress was concerned with curbing the illegal surveillance and investigation of individuals by agencies that had been exposed during the Watergate scandal. It was also concerned with potential abuses presented by the government's increasing use of computers to store and retrieve personal data by means of universal identifiers, such as individual social security numbers. It requires agencies to apply the requirements of the Act to any system of records established to accomplish an agency function. Further, it also applies those requirements to any contractor or employee of a contractor operating systems of records on behalf of the agency. So what does it require? The Act requires agencies to show an individual any records that are kept on them and to provide mechanisms whereby those individuals can seek to amend their data. It also establishes fair practices when gathering and handling personal data and restricts how agencies can share an individual's data with other persons and agencies. There are, however, specific exceptions that allow the use of personal records. These include statistical purposes, such as use by the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for law enforcement purposes, and for congressional investigations. The Act also gives individuals the power to sue the federal government for violating its provisions. Lastly, those who knowingly and willingly disclose information may be subject to fines and criminal misdemeanor charges. Next slide, please. Subpart 101 provides the definitions used within the overall Part 24. These terms apply within the context of this specific part only. Most parts have their own set of definitions that apply within the context of that part. The last four of these are the most important to take a look at. Personally identifiable information, or PII, is information that can be used to distinguish or trace an individual's identity, either alone or when combined with information that is linked or linkable to a specific individual. Record is any item, collection, or grouping of information about an individual that is maintained by an agency, including but not limited to education, financial transactions, medical history, and criminal or employment history, and that contains an individual's name or the identifying number, symbol, or other identifying particular assigned to an individual, such as a fingerprint or voice print or photograph. A system of records on individuals is a group of any records under the control of any agency from which information is retrieved by the name of the individual or by some identifying number, symbol, or other identifying particular assigned to the individual. Operation of a system of records means performance of any of the activities associated with maintaining the system of records, including collection, use, and dissemination of the records. Next slide, please. Subpart 102 contains the general requirements implementing the Privacy Act within the FAR itself. As such, it will be a bit repetitive of what we've previously covered. Under paragraph A, the Act requires that when an agency contracts for the design, development, or operation of a system of records on individuals, the agency must apply the requirements of the Act to the contractor and its employees working on the contract. Under paragraph B, an agency or officer or employee may be criminally liable for violation of the Act. When the contract provides for operation of a system of records on individuals, contractors and their employees are considered employees of the agency for the purposes of criminal penalties. Under paragraph C, if a contract specifically provides for the design, development, or operation of a system of records, the agency must apply the requirements of the Act to the contractor and its employees working on the contract. A system of records operated under the contract is deemed to be maintained by the agency and is subject to the Act. Under paragraph D, if agencies fail to require that systems of records on individuals be operated on their behalf, be operated in conformance with the Privacy Act, they may be civilly liable to individuals injured due to non-conformance. Next slide, please. This part of the FAR is very concerned with protecting the records of individuals and the systems of records on individuals. So what is a system of records? It's a group of data that contains a unique personal identifier such as name, date of birth, social security number, or fingerprint. It may also contain at least one other item of personal data such as home address, blood type, or credit card information. The data is stored within a database or system and is retrieved by the individual's personal identifiers, such as name, date of birth, social security number, or fingerprint. Next slide, please. We've talked through the requirements for protecting and maintaining systems of records. How does the agency ensure those requirements are translated down to federal contractors? Subpart 103 contains procedures that help the government understand if the proposal or contract contains a system of records as described, and then provides the procedures to implement protections within the government contracting space. In paragraph A, the contracting officer has to make a determination whether the award will involve the design, development, or operation of a system of records by reviewing the program office's requirements. If the determination is yes, then the contracting officer has the responsibility to ensure that is outlined within the contract statement of work and make available agency procedures and rules implementing the act. If in reviewing a solicitation or contract, Privacy Act information is not included when it should be, the contractor should request clarification from the contracting officer. Next slide, please. These are the clauses that have been developed to ensure contractors are aware of the requirements associated with the Privacy Act. They are FAR 52-224-1 Privacy Act notification and FAR 52-224-2 Privacy Act. Next slide. FAR 52-224-1 Privacy Act notification is the first clause. This is essentially a notification to the contractor that they may be implementing a system of records subject to the Privacy Act of 1974, and that there may be penalties for violation of the Act. When you see this clause, double check the RFP and contract statement of work for consistency. Does the scope contain a system of records on individuals? Next slide. FAR 52-244-2 imposes the specific requirements on the contractor. Paragraph A spells out most of the requirements we've already discussed, but applies them to the contractor instead of the agency. It also includes a flow-down requirement to subcontractors. Both the requirement for the notification found in 52-224-1 and the requirements of this clause for contractors who may be involved in the design, development, and operation of systems of records. Next slide, please. Part B relates to violations of the Act and the FAR clauses. Keep in mind that in the context of the regulations, what applies to the agency and its employees also applies to the contractor and its employees. Penalties for violation can include civil action against the organization and criminal penalties against individuals involved. Next slide, please. Part C just mirrors some of the definitions we already covered to incorporate them into the FAR clause. These include operation of a system of records, and systems of records on individuals. Next slide, please. Jumping forward to subpart 301, this section covers the requirements for training employees and officers. The goal of this is to help personnel understand what the requirements are and how to compliantly implement them within their systems and processes. Training must be completed during or before award performance commences and annually thereafter for personnel who have access to the system of records or who create, collect, use, store, maintain, disseminate, disclose, dispose, or otherwise handle personally identifiable information, or PII, on behalf of the agency or contractor. Next slide, please. This training is required to address a number of areas, be role-based, provide varying levels of complexity, and test the knowledge of users. The trainings should at least cover the provisions of the Privacy Act, including penalties for violation, the appropriate handling and safeguarding of personally identifiable information, the authorized and official use of a system of records or any other personally identifiable information, the restriction on the use of unauthorized equipment to create, process, store, maintain, disseminate, disclose, dispose, or otherwise access personally identifiable information, the prohibition against unauthorized use of a system of records or unauthorized disclosure, access, handling, or use of personally identifiable information, and procedures to be followed in the event of a suspected or confirmed breach of a system of records or the unauthorized disclosure, access, handling, or use of personally identifiable information. Next slide. The contractor may provide its own training or use agency-provided provided training content unless a contracting officer specifies that only agency-provided training is acceptable. The contractor is required to maintain and, upon request, provide documentation of completion of privacy training for all applicable employees. And last, no contractor employee shall be permitted to have or retain access to a system of records or create, use, process, store, maintain, disseminate, disclose, dispose, or otherwise handle personally identifiable information without having received training. Next slide, please. In order to implement the required training within federal contracts, FAR 52-224-3 privacy training was established. It basically requires that employees who have access to a system of records, who create, collect, use, process, store, maintain, disseminate, disclose, dispose, or otherwise handle PII or the system of records be trained. Next slide, please. Jumping to Part F, this just states that the training requirement be flowed down to subcontractors, whether it be a contractor to agency provided or subcontractor developed training content. Next slide, please. Here are some tips to avoid PII breaches. Take protection of PII seriously. Respect the privacy of others. Alert management officials when you see PII left unattended. Even if something is left unattended inadvertently, it's important to alert management as it can have serious repercussions for the organization and for individual employees. Know the Privacy Act requirements. Ensure that all message traffic and emails containing PII are properly marked and email is encrypted. Do not email PII to a personal email account or store on personal computers or systems. Next slide, please. Next, we'll take a look at requirements surrounding the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, the second key part of FAR Part 24 after the Privacy Act. While the Privacy Act protects information from disclosure, the Freedom of Information Act provides mechanisms for the public to access certain types of government information. The basic function of the Freedom of Information Act is to ensure informed citizens, which is vital to the functioning of a democracy. Since 1967, the Freedom of Information Act has provided the public the right to request access to records of any federal agency. Agencies are required to disclose information requested under the Freedom of Information Act unless it falls into one of 9 exemption categories. These were established by Congress because release would harm the government or private interests. Next slide, please. The 9 categories of exemption include information that is in the interest of national defense or foreign policy, internal personnel rules and practices of an agency, information that is exempted from disclosure by another statute, trade secrets and commercial or financial information that is obtained from outside the government and that is privileged or confidential, information that is privileged from civil discovery, personnel and medical files, information that is compiled for law enforcement purposes, examination, operating, or condition reports regarding regulation or supervision of financial institutions, and geographical or geophysical information. Of particular importance to contractors is number 4, trade secrets and commercial or financial information. This is the exemption that government contractors rely on to protect information in proposals, contracts, and other correspondence with the federal government in operation of federal awards. Next slide, please. Subpart 201 describes how information can be made available to the public, including publication in the Federal Register, providing an opportunity to read and review at convenient locations or to provide upon request. Next slide, please. Generally speaking, information should be made available under the Freedom of Information Act. However, Subpart 202 provides some exceptions in addition to the exemptions we talked about earlier. These exceptions include any competitive proposals submitted to the government to the extent that proposal is not incorporated or referenced in the executed contract between a company and the government. This is why it's important to talk with the contracting team when you receive a draft contract about what information is considered confidential with respect to this clause, and to ensure that your proprietary information cannot be disclosed. In addition, Part B highlights when additional data provided as part of any proposal may be exempt from Freedom of Information Act disclosure requirements, in particular relating to certified costing and pricing data requirements. Next slide, please. In this last slide, we just walked through the policy requirements established within the Freedom of Information Act. Beyond explaining how and what standards agencies are required to follow, it outlines strict timeline and responsiveness requirements for Freedom of Information Act requests, and outlines the exemptions that we previously discussed. Part B also suggests agency contracting teams contact their Freedom of Information Act experts and the Justice Department. In general, I'd also recommend that contractors with concerns in this area seek guidance from their government contract counsel before taking action. Next slide, please. This concludes our discussion of FAR Part 24, which included the Privacy Act and Freedom of Information Act topics and their incorporation into the FAR for implementation with government contracts. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for a very informative presentation, and thanks to everybody who joined us today as well. As mentioned, you can always catch the recording on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, and you can also find over 600 webinars on government contracting there. And that's it for today's webinar. Thank you again to Matthew Sigmund, and thank you to everybody who joined us today, and have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.